And so it is day 198 of our 1000 Dawns. And as we are less than 2 days away until we've come to the end of the first fifth of our epic adventure, um, there's a few things I wanted to be able to just talk about briefly that kind of happened yesterday that I feel would be rather interesting to mention. The first, and probably the most interesting of them all, is the fact that as soon as I got back to work, it felt just like business as usual. I slipped straight back in, and it felt very familiar. Because I thought I was going to have one of those problems where it would take me a little bit of a while to get back up to speed with things, and surprisingly, no. And that may or may not have something to do with the fact that I had done a little bit of extra training in my time off from watching tutorials, practicing things, etc., etc. I mean, from my point of view, it makes all the more sense to get better at my job, because how else am I going to get promoted in the next 1,000 odd days? Well, technically promoted twice, but the point is that I'm in a comfortable position to say, you know what, there isn't a valid reason why I can't or shouldn't be able to be promoted, or because there's every reason to try, and it's specifically because I can get promoted, and for long-term jeopardy, it could mean the difference between me staying exactly the way I am for the remainder of my days, or one day being the general manager. And ideally, that's sort of like the end goal. I would love to be in a managerial position, because I certainly know that it's not an easy way to get. It's not easy to progress, but at the same time, I think that's probably the whole point. Then they don't just give positions like that away. But I'm also conscious, I should say, of certain other things that are going on in the background, and I try not to let occupy my mind whilst I'm busy working, but it's the sort of thing that you kind of need to keep one eye open about, and it's through technology advancement, whether or not there's some people who want to worm other people out, and some form of corporate double crossing going on. It's not always like this, and there are so you hear about these things in other places, but whilst I've never seen it for myself, you need to keep one eye open about such things. You need to also understand, I suppose, the political climb of the workplace, not just about structure, or the difference between somebody who is your superior and who you're meant to speak to, and who you're meant to almost walk on tiptoe around. There are certain people you need to keep an eye out for, but then there's also the case of what happens when some people catch wind of the fact that you're trying to work your way through the system. There are people who will almost scout and mark people out for a particular type. I mean, we could talk about me, for instance. The fact that, I'm about one of about maybe a dozen or so, maybe 1 out of 1 dozen people at the current place I work at who actually works over 40 hours a week. And I do honestly wonder straight up whether or not that catches the attentions of some people, or if it catches their attention more when I openly say that I want to be able to work even more hours, and more than happily step in probably nearly 40 minutes before my actual shift begins, because they're short-handed and they need assistance in case there's something that needs to be seen to. I wonder if stuff like that, and there's plenty of other things besides, catches the attention of people, for better or worse. For the most part, it really should be for the better, because it's all about making sure everybody stays in work, and making sure that everybody goes home and is able to put something on a plate, that sort of thing. But as we sort of enter the second part of our 1000 Dawns, it's always worth reminding myself more than anyone else, because I'm probably the one who needs to hear this more, is the fact that, well, even if things don't work out the first time around, there is always the opportunity for a second time round. If you fail today, you can only try again tomorrow. And it's not all doom and gloom, because listen, I've went over this before. I've had plenty of setbacks, and I know fine well what it means to go to bed at night feeling drained and miserable because you actually couldn't believe what it's taken out of you to get to a certain point. Now, however, things seem to be finally changing, and I will still sleep at night no matter what happens. And even though it's only a few months away before I turn 29, and the fact that it's taken this long to finally accept that and come to terms with it, I'd rather it come now than it did maybe in 10 years' time, when it was probably a little bit too late and maybe I'm considered a little bit too over the hill. Thankfully, the time is a little bit on my side in that regard, but also at the same time, let's not squander this sort of opportunity. And that's kind of what I saw yesterday as a little bit. It was an opportunity to once again be the best person at work I could possibly be, and do it to demonstrate why I deserve to be promoted, and it gets me one step closer to being a general manager. I know it's probably been no secret at work that I am very, very interested in progressing in the career ladder, but I also know there are just as many people who are also pining for the opportunity. And it's not even one of those cases of, one against all and the devil take the hindmost, but it's one of those cases where the only person that is standing in my way is myself. It's not about whether someone is better than me, it's whether or not I am really the best man for the job. And sometimes you kind of have to ask those tough questions every so often. Is that if I want to have anything to do with trying to become a GM at all, then maybe now is the time to start telling myself in a really polite sort of way, if you're going to be a general manager, you're not just going to play at it, you are going to be the part. And when the time comes, or possibly when the questions start to come up, guess what? I'll be able to demonstrate that I can certainly manage myself, as well as a whole business.